Hello and welcome to the Lordly Verdict with me, Mitchell, Lord of my domain. Today I'll be reviewing a newer game since I'm done with the Resident Evil series. Well, for now at least. I might review 2 once I get to it. And I'm going to review another game in the Zelda series. See, I've always been a big fan of Zelda, and I've kind of enjoyed a couple of Dynasty Warriors games. Well, technically, I've enjoyed the spin-off Samurai Warriors. However, I'm the first to... Well, okay, not the first. I'm like the 15,000th to acknowledge a series issue with the latter. Zelda games have a general formula and do their best to add a new plot and to shift the nuances of the gameplay to provide something new. Each Zelda game has new mechanics, new items, new puzzles, etc., new bosses. They all have the basic get to dungeon, get sub-item to solve puzzles, use item to solve puzzles, beat boss, and go to the next dungeon gameplay where you repeat as nauseam. But it does a good job of making them more complicated and more fun. And I've actually seen a few of them in the more recent Skyward Sword where I actually required a guide because I wasn't thinking laterally enough. Dynasty Warriors, meanwhile, kinda doesn't change, well, anything. Even the plot's pretty much a rehash of the same story. I don't mean in the generic same archetype, same general idea in the Zelda and Link fight Ganondorf, save the world, or Mario and Luigi beat up on Bowser, save the princess. I mean the same story. The exact same events happen point by point. This is a flaw with Dynasty Warriors since they're adapting a very specific thing. The original Dynasty Warriors is the adaptation of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a specific talking about a specific novel talking about a time in Chinese history, while Samurai Warriors is an adaptation of a more general area that still had the same basic famous events. And furthermore, they don't go for the minor stuff. The first game handles all the most famous areas in history, and then they don't go over less famous areas. They keep repeating the same famous areas because, well, they're famous for a reason. They're kind of the most awesome parts. That said, the basic system of Dynasty Warriors is really fun. Like with Call of Duty and Mario Kart, they've gotten it down to a science. Heck, even Assassin's Creed's kind of the same, gotten it down to a science part. It's the kind of system that can be easily adapted for anything from Fist of the North Star to actually Guilty Gear, though they wasn't actually made by the same company. Now, when it was announced that Dynasty Warriors and Zelda were doing a crossover, I was kind of interested. I mean, it could be good. And upon playing it, well, it was kind of good. See, they aren't known for their great stories, and Zelda games, while having quite nice stories, they aren't exactly Baldur's Gate or Mass Effect here. I mean, they've got some really cool epic stuff, but it ain't Mass Effect here. Link never says a word and tends not to have much character. Ganondorf ain't exactly the most nuanced antagonist. And Zelda tends to be too busy getting kidnapped to actually get you, invested in her. Ocarina of Time, though, along with Majora's Mask, it was surprisingly good with some really neat side quests and all, and it managed to at least have some basic notes of good stuff. This one is closer to a Zelda game and story than Dynasty Warriors. It's more big story. It's pretty much a Crisis crossover like, well, if you read comic books, it's your standard big event that happened. An enemy has managed to summon villains from different times, and the only way to stop them is to get the heroes from different times. It's a blatant excuse plot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It means you get to see all your favorite characters from all your favorite games. You have to stop the villains and prevent the unsealing of an ancient evil, and when the ancient evil is obviously unsealed, you have to punch it in the face until it dies. Okay, slash it with the Master Sword, but same thing. Story does have some decent twists, but that's about it. It has decent twists. Its characters before I talk about the characters, I might as well explain the story. See, instead of Dynasty Warriors, which has a storyline for each individual character, there's only one campaign mode with a secondary villain-based campaign if you get the DLC. Unfortunately, this means there's less overall story. Dynasty Warriors could have 25-stage story modes plus, but they don't come together and aren't really focused. This one, it only has one mode, which means it's more focused, and it's to its detriment. They can really tell a expanding story. This does mean that certain characters get a bit less of a focus. The main story is carried by Zelda and Lena. Lena being the new character introduced for this game, who ends up getting to be the third Puck trio. Link is the standard hero, and while he's got an arc or two to himself, he's still very much a cipher like most Links are. He wants to rescue Zelda, he wants to save the world, that's about it. That said, the antagonists do get a nice little arc or two to themselves, and while the characters are two-dimensional, they make sure to be enjoyable. They all get at least one level to show off and say, this is why this guy's awesome. And the bad guys sometimes get multiple levels to really move them forwards. Pity, though, that outside of the focus levels, Link is the only one who really develops. Link has a bout of overconfidence. Zelda reveals herself. Again, this ain't Mass Effect here, but you get some... It's fun to watch, even if they're not, deep. And the heroes get some awesome scenes, and the showcasing friendship scenes are nice. The villains get to be awesome and kick rear, and they actually use tactics in a tactical strategy game. You don't see that as much as you'd expect, but they read the book of Sun Tzu. They use feints. They pull off ambushes, and that part works really well. It's amusing, it's decently epic, but lacks in depth. I wouldn't say it's the kind of game you play solely for the plot, but it does a good job of being a innocent fan service kind of game. So a fan of Zelda would see, oh yeah, I love that guy, and I get to play as them, it's fun. I'd rank it a B+. I mean, this ain't a game you play looking for the story, but the story entertains you. Gameplay, however, important thing. That big rant I had about Dynasty Warriors? Yeah, it's the same system. If you've played Dynasty Warriors, if you've played Samurai Warriors, if you've played Fist of the North Star by these guys, if you've played Dynasty Warriors Gundam, you know the game you're playing. You combo normal attacks with heavy attacks. You kill enough enemies, you use a super move. You dodge to get out of the way, you can block by locking onto the enemy, and personally, I never blocked. You don't need to. Quite frankly, the enemies you have use very specific patterns, and they aren't exactly in-depth. He keeps attacking forwards, and you just stand to the side and watch him do it. The villains have very good scripted plans and events, comparable to the zombies bursting through the windows in Resident Evil, but the AI is abysmal. When you actually find the guy you have to fight, you can dodge about any attack by just stepping out of range. They compensate by having damage be really, really hefty, and you've got to move fast enough to get out of the way. I will give it credit. The combo moves they give you are unique. Each character has a hook to them. Your heavy attack isn't just a slower, more powerful version of the light attack. They all do something interesting, and that's not something you see in a lot of these games. Link's heavy attack, for instance, is his trademark spin attack. You even got a unique attack where the little mechanic where you hold it down and then whoosh with even more damage. And if you use it in a combo, he throws his sword like a whirlwind and just jumps up, taking out either a horde of enemies or just the one guy in front of him. Each character does something similar with a unique mechanic. feel unique. It's not just different weapons. Zelda, for instance, has a charge gauge where you charge up her attack, and then it means she does a completely different, much more powerful attack in the combo. Sheik, for instance, elementally charges his attacks, and Lena just does some really cool book summoning stuff, and you don't care. It's not that useful. It's cool, but 90% of the enemies you face are one-shot minions. They don't even have health gauges. They die in one hit, and they never attack. Ever. Their sole purpose is to just stand there while you knock them down by the thousands. I'm not kidding. You can literally kill 1,000 enemies in a level. Up to 3,000 if you want to unlock certain special abilities. They feel like those extras in movies. Not even doubles. They just have the sole purpose of going blah, and die. The other 9% of the enemies, they're mini-bosses who attack, but, well, they're real basic enemies. They're about as dangerous as a Goomba. You defeat them, and you don't have to worry about those mini-enemies. Problem is, they can be defeated pretty dang easy. You just have to stand out of the way when they attack. It's kind of cool, but a bit superfluous. And then finally, you get the generals who actually, are deadly. They're enemy main characters, and each one you can play as. They're equal in strength to heroes, and would be a hard fight if their AI was in any way competent. They always use their full combo, which means they leave blunt, clear openings, and once they finish, they're open. The only enemies I ever had trouble with were these guys who'd been boosted to a ridiculous level where they can kill you in one hit. And in those cases, the game's just saying, don't fight this guy. Do some event over there which suddenly makes him vulnerable. That said, it does a good job, despite the basic system being a bit boring, it does a good job of keeping stuff happening. They're silly, pointless battles that you can button mash through, but there's a lot of them. It's a battle simulator with a good AI script behind it. Each of the campaigns has events that constantly happen, triggered by the player's progress that you can avert or allow to happen. Some are bad, some are good. Generally, they involve a place that needs help right now. Suddenly a door seals behind you, and you can only open it by defeating that boss. But you better hurry, because your ally's right over there, and he'll die in 10, 9, 8, and a ton of them with important effects. You fail to save an ally, those enemy minions you have to fight your way through suddenly become overcharged and start attacking your base. Sure, you can kill them easy, but the other 12... but there's coming in from 3 directions and you can only be in one at once. Enemies might lead a suicide charge, or you can even enable this thing called the Great Fairy Fountain, which lets you do a super move to decimate the enemy army. I'm not kidding, it kills 1/10 of them. Sometimes it can even devastate them by killing more than 1/10. It has a couple of unique mechanics that I haven't seen in these games before. Big one, the large bosses. Zelda's famous for its big honking monsters that can only be defeated by sub-weapons. And you get to see them. There's about 5 of them, and 4 of them can be defeated by a certain weapon. 5th, you go hit his toes. They're a good change of pace, and they actually tie into the cool system, which is the weak point system. Each enemy, after using its main move, has a second, just a brief bit, where they're vulnerable. And I don't mean in the sense that you can actually attack them without blocking. I mean, a little bar appears over the head saying, attack now. If you deplete the bar, you do massive damage just hitting them with an auto combo that looks really visually impressive. And it's really cool. See, well, I'll get into it later, and that's a bit it for the gameplay. See, it's kind of infuriating because it's not a bad game. I'll admit, it's a button masher, and anyone who says it's not a button masher, I'll say is kind of deluded. You pretty much can do a lot of damage by just mashing attack, attack, attack. You do have to dodge, but doesn't really make it less of a button masher. The battles just keep stuff going on to distract you from any problems with the gameplay. You can play a good battle for 30 minutes and you'll love every 30 minutes. Levels are a decent size, the story keeps things going, the weak point system and the large bosses keep it from getting boring. Because, well, in other Dynasty Warriors, if you're facing against the wrong boss, he can't hit you, but he takes so much damage he exhausts you. You're just waiting for him to finally die as you see his life bar go dink, dink, dink. The enemies are kind of invincible, or at least wearying to beat. Weak points mean that doesn't happen. You can knock off a good third to a half of their HP gauge just by using that attack. There's enough modes to keep things going. There's story mode, there's adventure mode. The main game has 10 to 20 hours. There's the adventure mode with more time. It's got good DLC, which actually even adds another story mode that focuses on the villains, but God, is the AI terrible. Honestly, despite the fact that I bitch about the system, I'm going to say this is a 4 out of 5. Objectively, it's the best Dynasty Warriors game I've played. Still, I can't 100% recommend purchasing it, which would normally make it a 3 out of 5 or even a 2 out of 5, just because of how quirky it gets. But I 100% recommend renting it if you can get GameFly, because it's really one of the best, a high-quality Wii U title. It's not the kind of game I'd recommend buying the system for, but if you don't have a rental service, buy it. I really don't think there's many problems with it. You need a game or two to play? It's right over there. No Xenogears, it ain't no Xenoblade, heck, it ain't no Mario, but it's damn fun. Though I will give you this warning. If you're tired of Dynasty Warriors, it won't change your opinion. But if you haven't worn out or you just want a good hack and slash, it's a good one. That's the lordly verdict. I hope you enjoy the game.